The first thing I ever did for these three men was tell them no, and the money I turned down was not small. It was a full guided day for three, the best rate in the shop, cash in hand, from three young men who were, without any exaggeration, some of the strongest people who have ever walked through my door. They could deadlift more than twice what I weigh. They had never once touched real rock in their lives, and the formation they wanted to climb looked, from the parking lot, exactly like a staircase. I said no in under 20 minutes. I offered them a beginner day instead, with a rope on it. The next morning, they laughed at me and they went up that rock without me, and the one thing I had spent 20 minutes trying to explain is the thing that killed all three of them before the next sunrise. This is one of those stories. Welcome back to Doomed Departures. What you are about to hear is a composite. The three men are invented, assembled from 14 years of watching strong, confident, capable people mistake one kind of ability for another. No real person is named. I'm going to call myself Marisol Ayala, and the three men, Rhett, Cam, and Dev. This is a dramatization. The rock is not, the heat is not, and the specific reason a guide with my experience looks at three athletes and says no is not. I have guided at Red Rock for 14 years. I am certified, I am careful, and I turn people away for a living as much as I take them out. Because the second half of this job, the part nobody sees, is knowing which people are not ready and being willing to be disliked for saying so. Let me tell you where this happened, because the location is half the trap. Red Rock Canyon sits about 20 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. You can stand on top of the Calico Hills and see the hotels. That closeness does something to people. It tells them, quietly, that this is an activity and not an expedition, that it belongs in the same category as a pool day and a show and a nice dinner, that it is a thing you fit in before checkout. There is a coffee shop near the turnoff, there is cell signal in the parking lot, the whole place is wrapped in the feeling of a city that is right there. And that feeling is a lie, because the rock does not know it is near Las Vegas and does not care. The Calico Hills are banded sandstone, red and cream, stacked in smooth, rounded layers. And from below, they look like the easiest thing in the world. They look like steps. They look like a staircase a child could climb, and that appearance is the single most dangerous thing about them, because it invites exactly the people who should not be on them to walk up and start climbing without a second thought. The three of them came into the shop late in the morning. They were in town for a bachelor party, mid-20s, and they were in a good mood, and I liked them, honestly. That is the part people never expect. They were not rude when they walked in. They were funny and warm and completely, cheerfully sure of themselves, and their sureness was not unearned. These were serious gym athletes. Rhett, the one getting married, told me his numbers without me asking, and they were real numbers, the kind that turn heads. Cam had arms like a comic book. Dev was the quiet one, the one who actually listened, which matters later. They wanted me to guide them up one of the bigger Calico formations that afternoon, and I asked them the question I always ask, which is where they had climbed before. And they looked at each other and laughed, and Rhett said, "We have not, but look at us." Meaning, look at how strong we are. Meaning, this is a strength problem, and we have strength. Here is the thing they did not know, and it is the whole heart of this, so I want to be clear about it. Climbing is not a strength problem. Being strong helps, at the edges, sometimes. But rock climbing is technique, and it is judgment. And above everything else, it is knowing how to get back down. And none of those three things has anything to do with how much a person can lift. I have watched people who could not do a single pull-up climb beautifully because they had technique and patience and sense. And I have watched extraordinary athletes get stuck 20 feet off the ground, shaking, because their entire fitness was built for a gym and none of it transferred to rock. Strength is not the same as competence. It just feels like it, from the inside, right up until the rock asks you a question that strength cannot answer. So I said, no. Kindly, but no. And this is rung 1, and I want to walk you through the whole conversation, because I said, in those 20 minutes, every single thing that was going to happen to them, and they heard none of it. I told them the truth about the rock itself first, because it is the thing outsiders never know. Red rock sandstone is soft. It is beautiful, and it is soft, and holds break off in your hands. Not rarely, regularly. A knob of rock that looks completely solid can snap off in your grip with your full weight on it, and it is dramatically worse when the rock is wet or when it has been baking in the sun all day, which changes how it behaves. I have watched holds break off under climbers far better than these three men would ever be. People with ropes and helmets and years of skill, and the rope is what turned those moments into a scare instead of a funeral. I told them that. Then I told them the thing that matters most, the thing I lead with for every beginner, which is that getting up is not the hard part. Coming down is. Going up a rock, you can see your holds, you can reach for what is above you, you have momentum and adrenaline and the top pulling you forward. Coming down, you cannot see your feet. You are reaching blind below you for holds you cannot look at on a route that very often does not reverse, because the moves that worked going up do not work going backward. Down climbing is a completely separate skill, and it is harder, and it is where people die. Cam laughed when I said it, not meanly. He just laughed because in his world, down is always easier than up, because in a gym you rack the weight and you are done. Then I told them about the heat, because it was going to be 110 degrees that afternoon, and the rock surface runs as much as 30 degrees hotter than the air. I told them that by the middle of the afternoon that sandstone gets too hot to hold barehanded, that your hands stop being able to grip, not because you are weak, but because the rock is cooking your palms, and that a climber who cannot close their hand on a hold is not a climber anymore. They are a person hanging on by nothing. And I told them there is no water out there, none, and no shade after 10 in the morning, and that whatever they carried was all they would have. And then I offered them the thing I offer everyone I turn away, because I am not in the business of just saying no, I am in the business of getting people onto rock safely. I offered them a beginner day, the next morning early, in the cool, on a proper route with a rope, with me, at a fair price, a real climbing experience, done right, that they would have loved. Rhett said they had not flown out to Vegas to be babysat. That is rung 2, and it is the moment the whole thing was decided, because the rope I was offering them was the entire difference between this being a story and being an ordinary Tuesday. The rope was not babysitting. The rope was the one piece of equipment that makes a mistake survivable instead of final. A roped climber who blows a move or grabs a hold that breaks, takes a short fall and hangs there and swears and tries again. An unroped climber who does the exact same thing does not get a second attempt. That is the whole of what a rope is. It is permission to be wrong once. And they heard the word rope and translated it into the word babysitter, because they had decided that needing protection was the same as being weak, and being weak was the one thing these three men were certain they were not. They left the shop laughing. An hour later, they came back, not to me, but to another guide in the same shop, a man I have worked beside for years, and they asked him the same thing, hoping for a different answer. That is rung 3. He told them exactly what I had told them, almost word for word, because there is only one honest answer to that question, and he watched them roll their eyes and leave a second time. 2 guides independently told 3 men not to do the thing they were about to do, and the second refusal only made them more determined, because now it felt like the guides were the problem. Like we were a cartel of cautious people trying to sell them a rope they did not need. Let me stop here and ask you something, because this is not really about a rock. When was the last time you were genuinely excellent at one thing and let that excellence convince you that you would be fine at a completely different thing, one you had never actually done? The great driver who assumes he will be a great skier. The strong swimmer who assumes she will be fine in a rip current. The person who is so competent in their own world that they cannot imagine being a beginner in someone else's. Tell me below, because that is the exact trap, and it is not stupidity. It is the opposite. It is competence, real competence, pointed in the wrong direction, and it is one of the most dangerous things a capable person carries around with them. They drove out to the Calico Hills a little before 11, which is another detail that tells the whole story. 11 in the morning, in that heat, is late, dangerously late. And the reason they were late is that they had been out in Las Vegas until 4 in the morning, because to them, this was a fun thing to squeeze into a bachelor weekend, not a serious undertaking that demanded a dawn start and a clear head. They arrived tired, a little hungover, in the building heat, and they parked and looked up at a formation that looked like a staircase. And they felt, I have no doubt, completely fine. There was a climbing party at the base, real climbers, roped and racked, and they are rung 4, and they tried too. They saw 3 men in tank tops with no gear walking up to the rock, and they said something, the way climbers do. And what they said was specific and correct. They told them there was no anchor at the top of that formation and no walk off, meaning there was no safe way to secure yourself up there and no path to stroll back down the other side. The only way down was back the way they came, down the face, the hard way, the down climb. The men thanked them and started up anyway. Someone in the parking lot, a stranger, offered them water as they passed, seeing they had almost none. That is rung 5. They said they were good. They had 2 bottles between the 3 of them for 6 hours of exposed rock at 110 degrees, and a stranger held out more, and they waved it off because accepting it would have meant admitting they had not brought enough, and they were sure they had. And then, at the base, Dev, the quiet one, the one who listened, said he thought maybe they should go down while it was still early. That is rung 6, and it is the one that haunts me most because it came from inside the group. One of them felt it. One of them had the sense rising up in him, and he said it out loud, and the other 2 kept climbing, and he followed them, because it is very hard to be the one who turns around when your friends are laughing and going up. So the ladder had 6 rungs, and the last one was one of their own voices, and it was overruled by the other 2, and Dev went up the rock he had just said he wanted to come down from. I keep coming back to Dev. He was the one who had actually listened to me in the shop, the one whose eyes had moved when I talked about the down climb, the one in whom some quiet part had filed it away as true. He felt it rising in him at the base, the sense that this was wrong, and he said it, which is more than most people manage. And then he swallowed it, because the cost of being the friend who ruins the moment felt right then higher than the cost of the rock. It was not. It is never even close. But that math is almost impossible to do correctly when you are 25 and your 2 best friends are laughing and already climbing. They topped out in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. That is how easy the up was. They stood on top of that formation, whooping, filming, arms in the air, genuinely, completely elated. And I believe that was one of the happiest moments of that entire trip for them, standing up there strong and victorious with the whole desert below them and the strip shimmering in the distance. They had done it. They had proven the guides wrong. It had taken 11 minutes, and it had been, for 3 gym athletes, almost embarrassingly easy. That summit was the exact center of the disaster, and they thought it was the end. Because now they had to get down, and everything I had told them in the shop came due, in order, on that hot rock with no rope and no water and no one who knew where they were. The first thing they discovered is the thing I had led with. Down was not up in reverse. They stood at the top of the face they had come up, and they looked down, and they could not see the holds. That is not a figure of speech. From above, leaning over a bulge of sandstone, you genuinely cannot see the footholds beneath you, and the moves that had felt so easy going up did not exist going down, because their bodies had done them on instinct and momentum and could not reconstruct them backward. They were standing on top of a rock that they had climbed in 11 minutes and could not climb down at all. So they waited. That was the reasonable thing, and it was also the trap closing, because up there was no shade and the afternoon was coming, and every hour they waited, the rock got hotter, and their 2 bottles got emptier and their hands got worse. They waited for it to cool, maybe, or for an idea, or for someone to come. Nobody came. Nobody knew. And here's the question everyone asks, the reasonable one. They had phones. Why did nobody call for help? The answer is part signal and part pride, and the 2 took turns. Signal in the Calico Hills comes and goes, strong in the parking lot and unreliable back in the formations, and a call that will not connect is its own kind of cruelty. But the deeper reason is that for the first hours, the good hours, the hours when a call would have brought a helicopter while they still had water in them, they did not believe they needed one. Calling for rescue meant admitting they were the exact people the guides had warned about, and they were not ready to be those people yet. By the time they were ready, the batteries were cooking in the heat along with everything else, and the window where a phone could have saved them had closed while they were still telling each other they had this. And the heat did the thing I had warned about. The sandstone climbed past 130, 140 degrees in the sun, too hot to hold, and their hands, already tired, already dehydrated, stopped being able to grip. This is the part outsiders never understand. Their strength was still there. They could still have lifted enormous weight, but you cannot downclimb a rock you cannot hold onto, and a palm pressed to sandstone that hot cannot close, and so their hands failed them long before their muscles did, exactly as I had said, and their muscles were never the thing that was going to save them anyway. By late afternoon, 2 of them decided to try it. I do not know which 2, and it does not matter. They had run out of water and out of patience and out of options, and staying on top was its own death. Slower but just as certain. And so at the hottest part of the day, with their hands shaking and the rocks scalding, 2 of them started down the face they could not see. And a hold broke. That was the thing I had told them in the first 5 minutes, standing in my shop with a rope over my shoulder. Red rock sandstone is soft and holds break off in your hands, and it is worse when the rock has been baking. It broke the way I had watched it break under climbers far better than they were. And the difference, the only difference, the entire difference, was that those better climbers had been on a rope and these men were not. I am not going to describe what happened next, and I am not going to put you at the bottom of that rock, because they were young men with families, and this channel has a line I will not cross. The fall is not the lesson. The lesson is everything that happened before the fall, all the way back to a shop in Calico Basin where 3 strong, likable, doomed young men laughed at a rope. 2 of them were found at the base of the formation. The 3rd was found on top where he had stayed, and he was alive when they reached him, and he did not recover. Because a person cannot survive that many hours on hot exposed rock at that temperature with no water, no matter how strong they are. And strength was never going to be the thing that saved any of them. Here is the cruelty of that particular place, and I think about it more than the rest. From up on those rocks, they could see Las Vegas, they could see the hotels. 2 million people were 20 minutes away. There were more human beings within sight of those 3 men than most people see in a year, and not one of them knew that 3 young men were dying on a staircase of red rock in plain view, because closeness to a city is not the same as closeness to help. And the whole time they were up there, the pools were full and the shows were selling out, and the desert was doing the quiet, patient, indifferent thing the desert always does. The climbing party from the base mentioned them to a ranger near closing time. Not as an emergency, as a complaint, almost, about people scrambling around unroped where they should not be, the kind of thing rangers hear constantly. By the time anyone understood it was more than that, the light was gone, and a search on that terrain in the dark is its own danger. So it started at first light, and first light was far too late, and had been for hours. The rulings were what they had to be, heat and fall related. There was nothing else to find, no mystery, no bad luck, no freak event. Everything that happened had been described to them, out loud, by 2 separate professionals and a party of strangers before they ever left the ground. If any of this reached you, do the small thing that carries it to the next person who looks at a rock that resembles a staircase and thinks their strength will be enough. Like this video, so it finds someone in a parking lot instead of a comment section, and subscribe so you are here for the next one. Not for me, and not for a number on a screen. Do it so that one more strong, confident, capable person somewhere hears a guide say no, and instead of hearing an insult, hears the truth, and takes the beginner day and the rope and lives to be embarrassed about how careful it all was. I have turned that morning over more times than I can count, and the thing I keep landing on is this. People thought I was being cautious with those 3 men. I was not being cautious. Caution is a mood, a personality, a tendency to worry. What I was being was accurate. I looked at 3 people and a rock and a temperature, and I described correctly. Exactly what would happen if they did the thing they wanted to do, and then they did it, and it happened, in the order I said, for the reasons I gave. That is not caution, that is just knowing the rock, and the whole tragedy is that they could not tell the difference between a professional being careful and a professional being right. Because from where they stood, strong and sure and 20 minutes from a hotel, the 2 things looked exactly the same. The beginner day I offered them was still on my calendar the next morning, early, in the cool, with a rope. Their names were written in for a start time none of them made, and I sat in the shop at that hour with the gear racked and ready, the rope coiled by the door. The one piece of equipment that would have turned the worst weekend of 3 families' lives into a good story about the day. Some gym bros got humbled on real rock and learned to respect it. That was the day I had wanted to give them. It was right there. It had a rope on it. All they had to do was be willing for one morning to be beginners. Next time we leave the rock behind for cold water, where strength is no protection at all, where the danger does not care how much you lift, and where it takes the fittest, most confident person on the trip first, for no reason but the water being water. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.